Hey everyone. I hope everybody's doing okay with the snow and you got home all right, nice and safe. So today in class we really didn't get to a lot of what I wanted to talk about and some of the main points that I wanted to make because we kind of got stuck both in first period and in fifth period talking about corporations and kind of what they were all about, which I think is okay because it's an important concept to understand what corporations are and how they work because it becomes a major part of American society. So all of those big industrialists like Carnegie and Rockefeller, they're all going to be, all of their companies are corporations. And so we just kind of touched on some of the ways that they kind of dominate their industry. So we really talked about vertical integration and horizontal integration. Now, we didn't really kind of talk about some of the other ways they're going to kind of gain control and what are some of the differences between different words. Like, for example, what you see up here now, monopoly and a trust. A lot of people kind of interchange those words, but they're not exactly the same thing. So I really want to kind of make sure that you understand what the difference between a monopoly is and a trust. So in class, vertical integration and horizontal integration, those are ways for one company really to dominate an industry. So those are examples of monopolies or methods that a company might use to monopolize an industry, for one company or a corporation to dominate a particular industry. So Rockefeller and Standard Oil and Carnegie and U.S. Steel, those people, they're trying to form monopolies and completely dominate the industry themselves. Now, some other not so, I guess I would say, not the best business practices or the most ethical business practices are trusts. Now, trust, how this works, instead of trying to just dominate your competition and kind of buy them out and buy the whole process of how to make a certain product or buy out your competitors and then have complete control over the industry, what trusts do is all of the competitors kind of get together and they're going to basically set prices for the industry. And so they're going to set them within a certain range. And so this is going to be very dangerous because now it's the illusion of competition, but there really is no free competition. So they're not trying to undercut each other. The business owners actually get together and they're working together to set these prices. So it's kind of almost like all of the business owners, like let's say it's, for example, the sugar industry. All of the people who are trying to sell sugar to the United States public, they're all going to get together and kind of set the prices for sugar. And so it becomes a competition now, not between the competitors of sugar, but between the people who are trying to sell the products and the people who are trying to buy the products. So they're really, in a sense, scamming the American public by setting up these trusts. And so what this is a form of is something called business collusion. It's when business owners, they get together and they make these secret agreements to limit the competition and to fix prices. And if you think about it from a business standpoint, it's actually a really smart idea because what you're doing here is you're giving this illusion that there's competition here, and you're basically able to increase your profits. And it even goes to the sense of, to the extreme where, in certain cases, they're going to pool their profits together. So it's kind of almost like one big giant corporation under the illusion of several people kind of competing here. So when you look at when the American government actually does get involved and try and stop a lot of these business practices that are going on in the 1870s and 80s and 90s during the Gilded Age, where there's mass corruption kind of going on here with business and government. Later on, what we're going to study is the Progressive era, and when they do kind of get involved, they're not really going to target monopolies so much. They're going to target trusts. Because if you look at all the famous legislation, they're all antitrust laws. Because this is what they kind of look at as going against American business practices, that free competition that is kind of essential to have a capitalist society. So it's important to understand the difference between the terms, monopolies, trust, collusion, and what it all kind of means. Okay, so the reason that the government is really kind of not getting involved at the time, there's a lot of different reasons for why, but the big thing here is that they subscribe to something known as laissez-faire economics, or a laissez-faire economy. And in the basic sense, what this means is hands-off, meaning the government does not get involved in business. They do not kind of try and increase competition or stop competition. It's basically that capitalism, you let supply and demand kind of run its course. You let capitalism do its thing. And if there are certain people who come out on top because of that, well, that's fine. You know, they won the competition, they worked through the industry, and they deserve to kind of come out on top. And so this is what you kind of see an example of pure free market economy working. And the government just takes no involvement at all. Now, our government today is definitely not a laissez-faire type of government or type of approach to the economy. The government does intervene and it does regulate it and it does kind of get involved in it. But back then, during this time period, there's no safety net for a business as far as failing, but there's also no regulation of competition. And so this is a big reason for why the businesses and the big businesses can get away with a lot of this stuff, is because the government is not taking an active role in kind of controlling and curtailing things that are negative for the general American public as a whole. A trust is negative for the general American public. There is no way that that could kind of work in the people's favor. So because of this and because of the collusion and the trust that starts to develop, a lot of these big industrial giants that we've been talking about, like Vanderbilt and Carnegie and Rockefeller, a lot of people are going to start to call them this term robber barons. And what a robber baron really is, it's kind of a negative connotation of a captain of industry. And it's basically kind of saying like they're trying to rob the people here. They're barons, they're tycoons of industry, and basically what they're doing is they're scamming the people and they're robbing the people. This is a pretty famous political cartoon kind of showing different robber barons. And there's a lot of political cartoons at the time kind of depicting industrialization and kind of what's going on in American society. Now, what starts to happen here, we touched on this a little bit in class, but in 1900, you're going to start to see, or by 1900, you're going to start to see kind of an explosion of wealth in American society. And the wealth is going to be very concentrated. It's not necessarily trickling down to the average factory worker here, because there are no protections for the workers inside the factories either. There's no minimum wage laws. And so unless the businessman has some kind of moral values that he feels like he has to kind of give back to society and give back to his workers, they can become extremely rich and kind of exploit their workers in a tremendous way. So by 1900, you have a lot of billionaires here. And what I want you to focus on is like, what areas do you see a lot of billionaires in? So two big areas kind of stand out to me, the railroads and then also finance. So people are making money off of transportation, middlemen. They're not actually kind of really providing a product here. It's not people riding on the railroads like transportation. It's more shipping products. They're freight trains from shipping one product from one place in America to another place in America. And so a lot of these are taking things from the Midwest, from Chicago, shipping them to New York, to the big cities in the East, and making a ton of money off of that. So the perfect example of this is going to be Vanderbilt, who's going to make a ton of money. But he's not alone, obviously. Look, there's 40 billionaires in that railroad industry. And so you're going to have much more dominance kind of regionally in the railroad industry than, say, like a national railroad tycoon. But finance is also a big industry. And the reason finance is so big is because people like J.P. Morgan are financing industrialists here. And so they're loaning them money and kind of getting involved in this. And banking industry is going to develop into a major, major industry at the time. Now, if you fast forward a little bit more in American history, so more people are going to kind of get involved. And if you look here, it's much more diverse as to the amount of who are the billionaires in America, who's making the most money. It becomes a lot more diverse by 1918. So just kind of give you guys a comparison. If you want to kind of compare this to the average person at the time. At the turn of the century, like 1900, 1910, kind of in between these two graphs that I gave you, the average person is making about $12.50 per week, $12.50 per week. So what that comes out to per year is about $650 per year. So these people are billionaires at a time when the average American makes $650 per year. You know, the average American now is making somewhere in the range of probably, I don't know the exact figure, but I would guess around $40,000 to $50,000 is going to be the average American's yearly salary. So a billionaire in our society is a wealthy, extremely wealthy, beyond our wildest dreams wealthy type of person. Back then, think about it, $650 the average person made in a year, and these people have billions of dollars. So there's a nice gap that's growing between the average person and the wealthy people in American society. So what's going to start to happen? How do they justify this to themselves? Well, the industrials are going to kind of take on a social Darwinist viewpoint. So we looked at the South when we were talking about the New South, and how do they justify trying to disfranchise the black community, and how do they justify Jim Crow laws? Well, Northern industrialists are going to kind of take the same viewpoint as to why they succeed. They take social Darwinism and they apply it to industrialization. And they're going to say, well, yeah, my company succeeded because I was the most fit. Yes, they're going to say that. But then they're going to apply it again to kind of the working class. And they're going to kind of say, well, certain people in society are superior and certain people are inferior as far as just inherited characteristics and traits. And so they kind of feel like they gained their wealth because they deserve to gain their wealth. And it's kind of just the natural order, it's natural selection kind of playing out. And so the wealthy are wealthy because of their talent, and it's kind of survival of the fittest as far as economics and industry is concerned. And so this is kind of another interesting application of social Darwinism. And you can kind of see social Darwinism kind of takes on a racist overtones, it takes on class warfare type overtones. And so it's going to kind of make its way into American society and world society in a big way. It's going to justify imperialism. It's going to kind of play a major role. So it's like a scientific version of kind of ethnocentrism and justifying your position in life. Now, other people don't quite see it that way. That's the way the industrialists see it, but not the average person. So what you're looking at here is a political cartoon from a famous magazine that started in the late 1870s. So the name of the magazine is Puck Magazine, and basically this magazine, it was a political magazine, and it had a lot of political cartoons. So this is kind of the more common person's viewpoint of these industrialists, that no, it's not social Darwinism, it's that you're making profits off of the backs of the average person. We're carrying you. We're carrying this. We are kind of doing all of this work, and you're sitting there and you're kind of profiting from it. And so people are starting to become discontent because of the inequality that they see in American society. So that's a major kind of sticking point. And people are going to kind of get out there and voice their opinion. So as you know, it's America. People are going to get out there, they're going to criticize it, they're going to talk about it, they're going to write books about it. And eventually government's going to wake up and say, okay, we have to do something about this. We can't allow this inequality here and for them to be, the workers to be exploited like this. And so the message gets out there and it does eventually change, but it takes some time. So just to give you guys like a modern day example, if you notice, Bill Gates very recently has started to give a lot of his money away, and it's because he was starting to get the reputation, I think it's because he's starting to get the reputation of a lot of these other guys, like the Vanderbilts and the Rockefellers, who are like hoarding their money. And so he doesn't want to kind of be seen as the villain, like these guys are seen as the villain of the late 1800s. And so, like, for example, there's a political cartoon of Standard Oil and Rockefeller's company saying, like, he's dominating, he's taking things over, he's like this sea monster almost. And if you're familiar with global history at all, there's a very famous cartoon about England and the English Empire, which is very similar. It's like an octopus grabbing all the different continents. And so they're kind of saying, like, listen, he's doing the same type of thing here in the United States. Now, this political cartoon, also from Puck Magazine, is a very, very famous cartoon. And it shows you the other thing that people were concerned about with the fact that businessmen becoming extremely wealthy. And it's going to tie into this Gilded Age corruption that we're going to get into more and more in the next chapter. If you look in the background, these big guys in the background, it might be hard for you to see, but what they all have on their chests are like steel trust or sugar trust, oil trust, like different trusts that are out there in American society. And that's supposed to be the Senate chamber. And what it's showing you here is kind of like the fact that business is so wealthy and it has such a tie to government that it's influencing it to a disproportionate way, and kind of influencing and lobbying these government officials in a way that they shouldn't. So what's going to happen here is that some industrialists are going to start to practice something known as philanthropy. And the big one that's going to practice philanthropy is going to be Andrew Carnegie. And so I showed you in class like Carnegie Hall and some of the things that he's going to donate. And so he's going to be able to do this because he starts to kind of get into this, and he kind of calls it his gospel of wealth. The fact that wealthy people, maybe you're successful, but you have to give back to your community, and you have to kind of give back to society. All right. Well, I'm running out of time. So I will see you guys.